Keep this list handy to help you decompress after a tough session. It's also important to incorporate these activities into your daily routine because, as we tell our clients, this can significantly boost your emotional resilience and help you manage your time with these clients. Another tool I found helpful is maintaining a reflective journal. After sessions that particularly resonate with you, welcome to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. Hi, I'm Janine Wolf, and I'm your colleague down the hall. I have a passion for helping fellow therapists get the clinical and collegial support we all need to do this work. And wow, it just keeps getting harder every day. I'm the founder and facilitator of the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. I have been a social worker for almost 30 years, and I own a successful solo online private practice. More of us than ever are practicing in solo or online practices, and we all need colleagues to process cases with, commiserate with on those really hard days, and also to celebrate our successes with. In this podcast, I'll bring you insights about trends and changes in our field and sit down with amazing therapists who are doing amazing work. We'll discuss fictionalized cases, ways to practice sustainably, and of course, there will be plenty of laughing. I love laughing with friends. I'm so glad to have you as one of my colleagues down the hall. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. I'm your host, Janine Wolf, and today I'm discussing a topic that hits close to home for all of us, how the stories of our clients can resonate deeply with our own personal experiences and the challenges that arise from these emotional echoes. As many of you know, over the past year and a half, my family has experienced two significant deaths, one of which was completely unexpected and shocking. And while I have had many instances over the years of dealing with client stories that hit close to home, these were by far the most difficult to manage personally. I did take time off for both of these deaths, but in private practice, it's not really realistic to take off as much time as you truly need for bereavement while continuing to meet the needs of your clients and have the income you need to pay your bills. Although, as I've said before, having an emergency fund to compensate for situations like these is a really good idea. So with all of that in mind, I'm going to talk about what these emotional echoes are, how they impact you as a human who also happens to be a therapist, and how to care for yourself during these times. First of all, I like the term emotional echoes because echoes can be really loud or very faint, but either way, they're still present. So whether your experience was in the distant past or in the recent past, having these experiences with clients can be very impactful. When facilitating my consultation groups, I sometimes see glimmers of those echoes when therapists are presenting a case, where you see that tiny cue in their eye or some aspect of their body language that's a clue that they are dealing with more than just the dynamics of the case being presented. And depending on your relationship with that colleague and the context in which you are discussing this with them, it may be something you want to bring up and offer support to them. In our work, it's not uncommon to encounter clients whose experiences mirror our own. This could be anything from a shared trauma, similar life challenges, or cultural connections. Sometimes this happens because we are drawn to populations of clients whose lived experience is similar to our own in some way. I look at this as on-the-job training, and it can make your work with these clients very powerful. But these similarities can sometimes awaken our emotions about past experiences or current experiences, which can complicate the therapeutic process for us. We are then tasked with managing our own emotional regulation during the session while needing to stay professional and provide what the client needs in some way. Recognizing when our personal reactions influence our professional duties is crucial. It's about asking ourselves, am I reacting as a therapist, or is this my personal feeling surfacing? This recognition is the first step towards effective management of these emotions, and it gets easier with time and experience. But nevertheless, it makes those sessions much more complex for us. So let's consider my own scenario. Suppose you're working with a client who is navigating the grief of losing a parent, something you've recently experienced yourself. Or it could be something that you experienced many, many years ago, and you thought that you had dealt with it as much as you could or needed to, but something is triggering you in that session. During those sessions, you might find yourself unexpectedly overwhelmed by your own grief. Again, it could be experience or a more recent one. In my experience, this is when the value of supervision or peer consultation becomes a necessary resource. Sharing these challenges with trusted colleagues can offer new perspectives and strategies that can help you manage your emotional reaction, ensuring it doesn't cloud your professional judgment. But more importantly, allowing your colleagues to normalize and affirm your experience and hopefully encourage you to be self-compassionate if you're feeling frustrated or uncomfortable about your reaction is very critical to helping you process and move forward and figure out how to manage working with this client. So if you find yourself closely relating to a client situation, don't hesitate to bring this up in your next peers consultation group or with your supervisor. Externalizing these feelings helps in distinguishing personal emotions from professional observations, which is essential for both your well-being and the efficacy of your work. Now let's look at strategies for emotional resilience in these situations. Establishing and maintaining clear professional boundaries is more than a guideline, it's a necessity. This doesn't mean numbing yourself to empathy, but rather being aware of where your client's experiences end and where yours begins. It's about protecting both you and your client from potential enmeshment or other types of complications. In the demanding field of therapy, care of self is as crucial as any therapeutic technique. Engage in activities that help you detach and recharge, whether it's yoga, meditation, quiet time with a book, or something else. Find what truly helps you unwind and let go. And we all know that the term self-care is completely overused. So I'm not talking about these tried and true ways that everyone loves to spout, but truly looking into yourself and your needs and what fills your cup. Once you figure out what these things are, I suggest you keep a list of these things, since we have trouble knowing how to support ourselves when we are dysregulated. Keep this list handy to help you decompress after a tough session. It's also important to incorporate these activities into your daily routine because, as we tell our clients, this can significantly boost your emotional resilience and help you manage your time with these clients. Another tool I found helpful is maintaining a reflective journal. After sessions that particularly resonate with you, take a moment to write down your immediate thoughts and feelings. Reflecting on these entries can help you spot patterns and triggers, ensuring that your personal history enriches rather than hinders your therapeutic effectiveness. And you might be surprised as you start doing this reflective journaling, the things that arise in you that you weren't even aware of. It can be really helpful, though, in knowing these things so that you can plan ahead for potential clients that you might have echoes with. Another tool, when possible, is to prepare mentally before the session and then allow time to take care of your own needs after the session. This is most useful when you know sessions with a particular client will be difficult for you. And I would take that even a step further and look at your calendar when you've identified these clients or these situations and build into your schedule time to do that. Write it in to remind yourself, I need time to prepare mentally and emotionally before seeing this client, and I need some time after seeing this client to take care of my own needs. And remember, you may need to take some time off to care for yourself if you are struggling to work with certain clients. You may have returned to work sooner than you should have, or you might be having latent reactions that are more intense than expected. Either way, support from your colleagues in determining this will be very helpful, since most therapists deal with guilt around taking time off to care for themselves, either emotionally or with physical illness or other needs. Keep in mind that these are extremely sensitive yet incredibly important aspects of being a therapist. Recognizing when client stories affect us personally, utilizing our support systems like consultation groups and getting together with colleagues, and prioritizing our own physical and/or emotional health. If you found today's episode helpful or enlightening, please consider sharing this episode with a colleague. You never know who might also benefit from understanding more about navigating personal impacts in therapy. And since this is yet another area that does not get discussed or normalized enough in our field, you might be supporting a colleague in a way you didn't know they needed. Thanks for joining me on the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. Please remember, our work is hard, but it doesn't have to be lonely. Thank you so much for listening to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to colleaguedownthehall.com, where you'll be able to learn more about getting the clinical support you need and resources to help you work in a supported, sustainable way. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your therapy friends and colleagues. Subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.